3, 2, 1. Hit record. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Indie Pop on the New Age Insiders Network with the Last Mark Standing, lastmarkstanding.com, Damian Salty G, and the internet sensation herself, Heel Trina, the Marky Smart. What's up, Trina?
Hi, guys.
So we had an interesting weekend, folks, and a lot of it gave us pause for cause because for those who weren't following us on Twitter at the Marky Smart and at Dare to be Damien, we worked independent wrestling this weekend in various forms.
Yes.
I covered it in for my notes and for the show purpose. So I went for the first time in a long time, not as a fan, but as someone who covers wrestling for a living. And it felt weird to me, and I'll get into that more, but today's episode is going to center around a lot about the line where you go from fan to working an event as a form of media. And I don't like to call us the media, but in a sense, because we're doing this show for the New Age Insiders, that makes us the media. The fact that we do Last Mark Standing makes us a form of media. So I have to cover, and Trina has to cover events a little differently. But we also feel that it's gotten in the way of our fandom, and last night was a real big indication. So Trina, for those who don't know, what event did you attend last night?
I went to Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore in Waukesha, Wisconsin. So it was a big.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yes, exactly right. So it was a big event for them. Tony Nese was on the card. Ryback was on the card. Sandman was there. So a bunch of big names. Tony Nese took on Matt Cross. So that was amazing. Probably the best match of the night. Just a big crowd. Probably one of the biggest indie shows that I'd been to in a while. I was telling some people around who'd never been before that this is probably the level right below WWE or NXT, because that guy in the ring, Tony Nese, like he's going up to he just got signed to WWE. He's in NXT, and so this is the level right below that. And it was very interesting because I had to cover it. I was tagging along with one of the reporters from Wrestlingzone last night, and so I was covering it as media. I came into the event as media. I was in before everyone else, even before the meet and greet people, and so it was already a different vibe, like right off the bat. Mm-hmm. So, and then the night before, I was actually at in Warsaw, Missouri, to support 2 of my friends. They were doing a small show out there, and it was very, very tiny compared to what I saw at House of Hardcore. I was, like 30 people. I know we've talked about your experiences with Fiesta Pro. I think this might even be smaller. So that was really interesting to go from that one night and then the next night to, Tommy Dreamer's promotion, which is awesome.
Which with me, conversely, when I was at House of Glory last night, I talked about the Elks Lodge often, how it just looks like a really big gymnasium. It's basically a gymnasium with chipped paint, and it just screams independent wrestling hall. Like back in the ECW days when they talked about bingo halls and this, that, and the third. But there are a lot of events wrestling events specifically being run out of this place. So when you go there, it can't fit any more than 150 people. And if I'm wrong, guys, at House of Glory, just tweet me and let me know if I'm being wrong with the numbers here. But there was standing room. It was the student showcase. You know how like you had all these big names at your event last night? I didn't. I had a few. We had Ricochet, who I'd never seen live. So that was a pretty cool moment for me. We also had Teddy Long as the guest general manager. So holla, holla, holla for $1. And of course, he made a tag team match, a 6-man tag team match, which I thought was cool. And I saw your personal favorite karaoke person, Zack Sabre Jr. And in the middle of his match, I scream out, "Hey Zach, when are you gonna do some karaoke for me?" And he screams out while doing a European uppercut, "I fucking hate karaoke," as he's beating the crap out of his opponent.
Oh my god, this is so awkward.
And nobody got the joke. Nobody got the joke except for me. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh, I feel terrible now.
He wants me to remind you that he
all the time that I never will ever ask him about karaoke again. I feel really terrible now. Oh my gosh.
But so this event, wouldn't have brought a lot of people, because the first thing I noticed was all the tickets were one price. Front row, second row, general admission, all one price. So I'm thinking, well, it's HOG. I'm usually one of the first ones there. I got there. There was barely any seats left.
Yeah.
They overbooked to the point where there was tons of standing room. You have to stand by where the merch tables are.
Right.
To get a good view if you're not sitting down. And there was a lot of obstructed view seats. So I was stuck sitting and trying to take notes and watch the matches from behind an obstructed view. But for me, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking about last night, there was so many things wrong with fandom last night that and we're going to get to that. It was, oh my God. And it really showed me the fine line between being a good fan and being that fan. The joke going around at House of Glory about smelling Zack Saber's coat. I don't understand why this joke, hashtag smell the coat, came up. But when we had our seat upgrade, and it was one of those things where I wasn't given the seat. So let me just put that out there. I wasn't given the seat. It was more, hey, the people who were sitting here, they took their coats and they left, or they went somewhere else. So me and my friend decided to be typical New Yorkers and take the seat that was left open.
Right.
And whenever those other people come back, too bad, so sad. But there were so many drunken persons, let's just say that. So one of them was sitting next to me, bawling his eyes out, drunk out of his mind, screaming that he's an effing failure and he's sorry for being such a fuck up. And pardon the French New Age Insider people.
Oh, goodness.
To the point where I had to do the head tilt, like when you're on the subway and you see a homeless person and you don't want to make eye contact because you don't want to be the person they talk to. So I literally have to pull away to look at the matches at the left corner of my eye because I don't want the dude to talk to me. I felt bad for the people behind him because that's who was getting the brunt of all his emotional baggage. But man, everyone knows I'm a therapist, but shit, I wasn't about to jump on that. That was something I was not about to do.
Right.
And then there was, people sneaking in alcohol, like twisted teas and small little liquor bottles. And they had a full functioning bar here at the Elks Lodge, $6 for an Absolute on the rocks. I can't really complain, but holy fudge, when you really separate, and you can tell now that I'm putting this out there.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that I really wanted to talk about, I wasn't going to bring up, but now that I'm feeling real salty about it, I might have to.
Yeah.
And anyone who follows Last Mark Standing knows that when I go on salty rants, they're for a reason. But during the course of this show, and this was a student showcase, let me preface that.
Right.
My student showcase, it's pretty much, HOG is a wrestling school out here. House of Glory is run by Amazing Red. Don't know Amazing Red. He's one of the best cruiserweights to ever grace the planet. Look him up on Google, YouTube, whatever you want to do. But it's based out of Ridgewood, Queens. So all the shows are essentially based out of Queens, New York. There was no more than 100, 110 people who were able to sit. But it smelled like BO. A couple people really didn't shower. And I don't mean the wrestlers, I mean the fans. Some of them were, what's the word I'm looking for? I called them ass hats last night. So there were some people that were ass hats. With Zack Sabre Jr.'s coat, talk about smell the coat, and two fans in front of me kept telling the cameraman, kept telling the dudes at ringside working, dude, smell the coat. And at first it was funny, but you're thinking, why the fuck are you trying to get these wrestlers to break kayfabe to smell a coat? Like, what's the big deal? The reason why is because I didn't know this until I was told after the fact. Zack Saber's coat was worn by everybody, so they wanted to see how bad it smelled because it got passed around.
Ew.
Let me break the match down. He was up against someone from Private Party. The tag team is called Private Party, and they're one of the more athletically gifted wrestlers in House of Glory. And apparently they had this Adam Rose thing where they came out with quote unquote rosebuds, but everyone looked like they were coming out straight from a hip hop video. So, they gave Zach an invitation and it read, "You're invited to our dance party." And Zach's like, what the fuck? Because he was working heel. So, so there was a spot on the apron where Zach falls into the mosh pit, and they carry him off like a rosebud, like dun, 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 and they carry him to the back to the point where and too many people were wearing the coat. So Zach comes back, he's pissed off. He's like, I like a good party as much as the next guy, but I came here to wrestle, Oof. So he was really being heelish, and I appreciated it because I root for heels.
Right.
But the match itself was something I really got invested into, and this is where I turned the journalist hat on to the point where I was trying to block out all the douchey people because it was worked very strong style. I get on Zack Sabre a lot for not selling well or not showing enough emotion, but I feel like he showed a lot more during the match. So if you see that match and you go back to some of his earlier stuff, mm-hmm. It's not, his selling's a lot different now.
Yes.
And for me personally, it was just refreshing to see.
Right.
And I'm sorry if I'm getting off the point here, but that is what started me thinking, okay, I can't go here as a fan anymore. Mm-hmm. I have to go to these as someone who covers this professionally, because that's what you and I do with Last Mark Standing and now with Indie Pop, mm-hmm. where I have to drown out the dumbasses. I have to I have to black out because it takes away from me trying to understand. But I found myself being caught in the emotion of the fans that were trying to hijack the show. Mm-hmm. And that's my bad as a person who does this for a living, for a job. That's my bad to get caught up with the fandom when it reaches that level where you're not being respectful of what's going on. You're trying to be disruptive. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I failed myself as a journalist and as a broadcast host. And I was hard on myself to the point where I felt so bad this morning. I didn't want to do a show because I felt I was going to half-ass it. And we talked about this off mm-hmm. air. But as I'm the emotions, as it were, as I talk mm-hmm. about this, I was so proud to be one of maybe like 20, 30 people who actually wanted to go there not to get drunk or not to get wasted, but to appreciate the good wrestling.
Yes.
And I feel as if it's my job and it's my duty to educate those who ask, because there were people asking me questions about, hey, like this one woman behind me was saying about Zack Sabre. She didn't know who he was. She's like, who's this British dude? Mm. So I turn around, instead of me getting all marky and being all like, you don't know who that is, how dare you? I turned around, I was like, oh, he wrestles, primarily in England, but he's making his name now in the States for PWG, for House of Glory, Evolve, Beyond Wrestling, things like that. And this woman did not know any of these things that were in WWE centric. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So again, I took it upon myself to to educate as opposed to make fun of.
Right.
So and I'm going to take a pause because I want to be as respectful as possible here. Mm-hmm. It's hard to educate those who are drunk, who refuse to be educated, and who just want to go to make a spectacle of themselves and get themselves over. And I don't have respect for those kinds of fans. There's a way to have fun at an event. And again, it's not about trying to police people, but it goes back to decorum.
Right, exactly.
Knowing how to work within the show's framework, you get a pop from one of the wrestlers or from who you're trying to get agitated, but you leave it alone. Why do you keep hammering the point? What, to make yourself more famous? Nobody gives a crap about you. Nobody gives a crap about me going to an event, so I like to blend in. The best part for me is that I don't have to scream out the DOS chant, because that was one of the biggest highlights for me, is that people are already doing it, and I don't have to do it anymore. And the same ref who sees me at every event at House of Glory understands when he hears DOS, he's either going to look for me or he's going to know that, okay, they're going to try this. Let me get this out of the way. So he'll be like, DOS, to like, wink, wink, break the fourth wall. Yeah. Thanks, guys. But then that's when you stop it. If you can get the ref to break kayfabe for 1 minute, or a wrestler to break kayfabe for a minute, great. But let's go back to the action. And for me, that is the problem that I am dealing with currently, is separating my fandom with being someone who reports on this for a living. And I know you have a similar aspect, but the opposite, because I know you miss being a fan. So I wanted you to elaborate more on your experience at House of Hardcore, because it's a bigger show, it's a bigger audience. So what was it like for you?
Right.
Going through all that?
Yeah, so it was interesting because, you know, one of my friends, Mike Killam, works for Wrestlingzone. And so he's like, why don't you tag along with me tonight as media, and you can see me do interviews and stuff like that, because I'd never seen any of that stuff before. You know, and he knows about our podcast, he knows what we're trying to do. And so, you know, he just wanted to give me a chance to see if I was interested, you know, in that sort of thing. And so he actually had interviews set up with Sami Callihan and a couple other people, but Sami was the big one that he was going to hit. So it was perfect, you know, because I know Sami, so it's fine. And so what I found was that there were a couple things that he needed to document the matches and things like that. And he needed to find Sami. And so there were things that he had to do work-wise. And I was just tagging along, like I was shadowing him, that, you know, prevented me from enjoying the match as a fan. You know, it was like the one match that I wanted to see was Son of Havoc, Matt Cross versus Tony Nese. And this, I think, was probably Tony Nese's last date, if not one of the last dates for him before he's fully with WWE. And yeah, we had to go find, you know, some promoter guy and talk to him. And you know, there was just all this like extra stuff, you know, that had to go on. And I couldn't just be there and watch the match and, you know, like mark out like I wanted to. Because that's the other thing, is because people noticed that I was not just like one of them, like, you know, like I had more access than them, and you know, like I didn't have a press pass or anything, but I got in like an hour before everybody else, like with the media and stuff like that. And so you know, like already I just kind of felt like not one of them, so probably I acted like that as well. And it was just weird, you know, because I'd never been to House of Hardcore before, and it looked like such an awesome show that I just wished that I had been there as just a fan and not to cover it, because I would have liked to experience it fully, just as Trina like experiences a wrestling show, and not have to think about the other stuff or feel a little strange because I feel separated from like the rest of the audience. So yeah, I mean, that was a little weird. That was really like my first time where I felt segregated from everybody else, and there was a line between media and like fans. And so, you know, it kind of sucked because then when we finally did get Sami, Mike threw me a curveball and was like, why don't you interview him? You know, because let's just see like how I can do and whatever. And I found it really difficult to turn off Mark mode, I guess, and, you know, and turn on reporter mode, you know, because even during the event, I had a hard time, you know, because I really wanted to talk to Tony Nese, and Mike's like, you know, like just be cool about it. Like I was definitely being myself, and I needed to tone it down and be professional, which obviously I've you know, like I've worked a job before. I know how to be a professional person. I just found it really hard to be in like the thing that I love so much, you know, like it's fine when I go into a boardroom because I don't like give a shit about shares and whatever, you know, like profit sharing or whatever. So, but if I'm in the wrestling, like a wrestling show, like that's like my dream come true. So it's like being in a room with like rock stars that you idolize, and then having to be professional at the same time. So it was, you know, it was a little weird for me. So I had to get over it, especially because I was reminded that you know, we will be working with Big Mike and Glory Pro, and I'm definitely gonna have to learn how to be professional by then, and not be such a mark and freak out a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it was a great experience, great show, really awesome. Just a little strange for me because this time around I didn't just get to be a fan.
And that's the funny part with us. The deeper we go, folks, on Indie Pop, where we peek a little bit behind the curtain, we talk about wrestlers we like or promotions that we enjoy. And again, I want to preface something here. I am not paid to go to these events, to buy my ticket or anything like that. I cover these events for NAI, for Last Mark Standing. That's why I go to all these events. If it wasn't for this, who knows, maybe 5 months ago, I wouldn't be going to this many independent wrestling shows. But now that I go, and now that I'm there, it's just a different experience for me. The first couple of times I went to House of Glory, I went as a fan. I went as the get drunk, or in my case, get tipsy, where I can overcome my social anxiety and watch it and interact with others, and, you know, just say hi to people and try to get our show over. But now when I'm sitting there with my little notepad, and my dorky ass was with my notepad, writing down stuff and just trying to take these notes, and I just found myself getting so wrapped up into it that I didn't know how. I didn't know how to separate.
Mm-hmm.
And just imagine if I'm doing this at a bigger indie show event, because next month or later this month, I have to go to House of Glory, the 6-year anniversary show with the Hardys and the Dudleys, Eddie Edwards, people like that, just Leo Rush, these are people who have made it or are on the cusp of quote unquote making it. So I have to be an even more of a journalist, if you want to call me one, or a reporter or anything like that, because I want to be as authentic as possible, but I still want to have fun, so you could tweet us at The Last Mark Podcast and tweet myself at Dare to be Damon or at the Marky Smark. How would you rather go to these events? Would you rather just go as a fan, or would you be okay with trying to balance working as both a fan and as someone in the quote unquote media, or who had to cover wrestling for a show, or it could be anything. It's just like with sports broadcasting.
Right.
Do you go to enjoy it as a fan, or are you going to work?
Right. Well,
for me, I didn't hit that point.
Yeah.
I didn't hit that point where I felt like I was working, but I can tell when it comes to me. I get really obsessive when it comes to stuff like that. I need space. I'm OCD. It's one of those things where let me focus. Don't talk to me when I'm analyzing something. It goes back to my psychology background. So I don't know how I'm going to balance this, and it's going to be really fun chronicling this with you all for Indie Pop on the New Age Insiders Network. It's going to be really interesting because the venues are going to get bigger. They're going to be intimate. They're going to be 30 people, 100 people, maybe 300 people. Maintain professionalism, but at the same time, I want to have fun. And this is where the downfall happened when I got the seat upgrade, and I tuned out the reporter gig. And when I saw Zack Sabre wrestling, I lost it. I was like, yeah, because I have an appreciation for Zack, and I have an appreciation for strong style wrestling. So after a while, it just became a bunch of overhand slaps to the chest, smacks in the face, come hit me, come get some, like pulling your man card out. So I'm like, yo, you don't slap a man. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And you can hear my New York accent coming out now, because that's the mode I got into. Like, oh, hell no, kind of thing. Like, if someone slapped me like that, I had to take it back a notch. And then the next match was Ricochet, versus Anthony Gangone. And I had never seen Ricochet. So I had a mini mark out moment. So you can go on my Twitter and see the video I was filming, and it was very amateurish, but the place went buck wild for Ricochet. And you're thinking, holy crap, this is Prince Puma. This is Ricochet. This is Captain New Japan. This is Captain PWG, the man who defied all types of gravity. And he's at this independent wrestling show that's trying to make it from the ground up. Yeah, this tiny Elks Lodge. And then you take a half step back and you appreciate the fact that they're willing to give back. And for me, that's a beautiful thing. So I'm able to go back into reporter mode and say, I watched this match. It was done in the heel, Anthony Gangone. He's a heel that gets away with. He's a smarmy heel. He's like the Miz. He doesn't look like a wrestler. One of the chants going around was shave your chest hair, He has like this frumpy bodyguard with a wrinkly express shirt. Called, I think it was Chupa. So we kept calling him the Chupacabra because, he kept interfering at really odd points in the match. But the match was psychologically done well. A lot of near falls. I saw Ricochet fly, and I'm thinking, holy shit, there's no way a man should be able to do what he does, but he does. I don't get it. I don't understand how he can do the things he does. He's got spring in his legs, but he put the homegrown talent over. And I think that's another thing, if you're a guest at an indie show, and I think you've experienced this too, Trina, where if you're guesting, you'll put over the homegrown talent. Because I've seen Zach do it at House of Glory. I've seen Tony Nese do it at House of Glory for one of my personal favorites, Ken Broadway. The gimmick is just, he's like a millionaire mogul type from Manhattan. The cash flow mafia. It's like ghetto strong style, but Zach's worked with him, Nice's worked with him, and they both put him over. Now, yesterday he went up against Rude Boy Riley, and who's going up and down the East Coast as a person to watch out for. So if you get a chance to check out some Rude Boy Riley matches or some Ken Broadway matches, do yourself a favor. You're in for a treat. But that's when I started to know that people, again, were just, they didn't give a shit about what was going on in the ring, man. They just really wanted to put themselves over.
Right.
They wanted to scream obscenities at the wrestlers. I made one comment to Ken Broadway talking about, man, you're not from Manhattan, you're from Williamsburg. Stop fronting. Like, and that, that got over with the crowd. They were just like, oh, he called you from Williamsburg, So I know when to say stop. But some people, they just perpetuate that douchebag fan mentality. And I'm sorry if I'm beating the dead horse, but this is something on Last Mark Standing we go to bat for every single episode. I don't know how you experienced that, Trina. Can you show the audience or alleviate for the audience just what exactly happened with the fans at the event last night at House of Hardcore?
So this was a great crowd. It was a fantastic crowd. And I think, this is Tommy Dreamer puts on fantastic shows. He's very professional about the way he runs all of this. And, this is not just like, oh, I'm a wrestler and, I'm just gonna have fun with my friends. Like he's in boss mode. And the fans are super excited about it. And it is a bigger venue. So, it's interesting because you see, the crowd policing itself. Sometimes, like if somebody was trying to put themselves over, like people would scream at them and whatever. And so you saw a very experienced crowd. I think what you had was, more of a student showcase, so more of a casual fan, maybe a WWE fan who just saw that there was Ricochet was going to be there or there was going to be some wrestling. Yeah. And then on Friday when I was at Warsaw, I think it was at the City Hall is where they had this event. First of all, it looked like somebody's house, just like a really big house. And it just had a ring and then just one row of chairs around it. I don't even think these people had watched wrestling before. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a very different crowd compared to the one that I saw at House of Hardcore. And so, I think it goes back again to what you're saying about decorum. You have to have respect for other people and what they're trying to do and know that you're the audience and they're the performer and there's a certain way that things work. And there is a way to enhance the show, by participating. And there's also ways to be respectful, by allowing them to just do what they do. So, it's hard. I think you kind of have to experience it yourself. You know what I mean? Like listening to you talk about it last night. I never really necessarily heard you that riled up about a negative experience that you've had before. Right. So I think that's why we encourage, the listeners to go and go to their local indie or go, travel to see shows if you like a particular wrestler, because you can see the different vibe in different places. And then it gives you a better understanding of how fans are and how your favorite wrestlers are treated when they go from city to city. So somebody like a Zack Sabre Jr., when he comes to Chicago, is very, very respected. What sounds like happened with his jacket would never happen in Chicago. I'm apparently the only jackass in Chicago that will bother him about karaoke or anything. So in Chicago, he's treated pretty well, and so it's interesting. And going from St. Louis to Kansas City, because I'm here in Kansas City, and I've seen a couple shows in St. Louis. Again, very different crowd. You had a lot of loyal hardcore fans in St. Louis, had been going to the same promotion for 20 years, knew everything about the wrestlers. And then maybe in Kansas City, I went to an event in a baseball stadium, and they were having a good time. They definitely were putting themselves over, but in the atmosphere, it worked because it was a baseball stadium. It didn't feel so intimate. And so if people were screaming, it just added to the crowd noise as opposed to singling out one person trying to say one specific thing. And actually, I went to that show the day after the Raw with the Jobber, who said that he liked big sweaty men. And there was a girl with a sign, "I love big sweaty men." And it just fit the whole aesthetic, because like we were just a ruckus crowd in a baseball stadium, and Tommy Dreamer was there actually, and he did a hardcore match that went through the stadium. So I mean, like in that situation, like it was totally warranted, to scream whatever you want. I did a Hacksaw Jim Duggan dance, so like everybody was just having a good time, and so it's feeling the crowd, feeling how other people are reacting, and being respectful of other human beings and what they're trying to contribute to the situation. So yeah, it's fruitful, and yeah, go ahead.
I have a follow-up, but I want you to finish that thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I think it's fruitful for people to experience different things. So I know some people only go to AAW or only go to House of Glory, or they go to the same shows every month. But if you have the chance to go to another show in a totally another city, or wherever, or a small place versus a big place, just to see how fandom is, because if you're a fan of wrestling, or you're a fan of certain wrestler, it's interesting to see how they're treated from place to place. Because then that way
Right.
yeah, because that way like, okay, when they go to X city, they're treated like a king, and then maybe when they go to this city, not so much. So maybe you try and like be a little bit nicer, or whatever, like give them a little extra, like when you're cheering for them in the crowd. So yeah, I mean, I think all the experiences are valid, and if you're a wrestling fan, you find something in all the different venues that you go to.
And I want the audience to actually share some of their good indie show memories, or indie shows that federations that they'd recommend, and always tweet the show at Last Mark Podcast, myself at Dare to be Damian, and Trina at the Marky Smart, lastmarkstanding.com. I loved the fact that students a chance to show their wares, because even I was surprised by who some of the wrestlers were, because some of them are security, at House of Glory, or they're just, there was a ref making his debut as a wrestler, and we, Rick Castle and me used to call him child abuse ref, because he looks like he's 4'7" and weighs about 60 pounds. And he went up against his first professional match. I want to say a cross between Psychosis and Kane, escaped the mental institution. So, and he's tall, like it's a big dude, and it played the prototypical David versus Goliath theme.
Right.
The place popped when child abuse ref actually hit a German suplex, a delayed German on the ginormous man. And obviously he was, he helped him out, didn't sandbag him, but
right.
Place erupt to see this little dude execute a German suplex. It was freaking amazing. Like the gimmick. Do you remember Crash Holly?
Yes.
Crash Holly, exactly. So that gimmick is essentially Crash Holly. He came to the ring with a step stool.
Jeez.
To play up the fact that he's a super heavyweight, he brought the step stool to the ring. So what wound up happening was, strength to start the match. So what does he do? He grabs the step stool to jump up and do the test of strength with this fake Kane / Psychosis guy. And it was funny. Like, that was the purpose of this match. It was comical. It was hilarious. And the crowd popped when David beat Goliath. But I just love the fact that he hit a German suplex. You don't see someone who's like 4'11", 97 pounds soaking wet, hit a German suplex on someone that outweighs him by at least 70 pounds, 80 pounds. And he looks like he can't even bench press me at 170 pounds. So, fan moment for me. If anyone listened last week to Indie Pop, I referenced an event I went to called Future Is Now, and there were some douchey fans there that we policed. And this goes back to Trina's thought about politicking, policing, whatever you want to call it. I know how to speak English. I'm sorry, folks.
It's late.
It's a late night. It's almost midnight here in New York. It's past midnight. But shit, where was I going with this?
About policing yourselves as an audience.
Yes, self-policing. That same douche nozzle that we hated, we were like STFU, was there, and people at this show were loving him, as opposed to Future Is Now, where everyone hated him. So when you talk about the environment changing, being like the more casual, get yourself over crowd versus people who are going to support wrestlers and to actually analyze the action, it was on display last night. It was so, as you were saying it, that a lot of these people just showed up because, hey, it was a $20 ticket. You got to see Ricochet. You got to see Teddy Long. Thumbs up. But that's what you came for. You didn't come for anybody else. You didn't come to appreciate wrestling. Because the whole point of Indie Pop is when we talk about these events and we go through these journeys, because there's a lot of people who will never make it in the big leagues that are at these shows, and they're doing it for $20, for $50 just to improve. There are so many up and coming. Leroy Green is one of my personal favorites. So big shout out to Leroy Green, a big personal favorite of mine, because he looks like he couldn't beat a fly. Recently made his debut, and he's one of the most over stars for House of Glory, because he's in a storyline where Ken Broadway is like his benefactor, paying for his mom's medical bills or whatever. So he's gonna eventually turn on Ken Broadway, and the place is gonna erupt. The slow face turn for Leroy Green is going to happen. But he's the most over guy at House of Glory. And I told him this on Twitter. You know you are, so stop kidding yourself. And you know, he's trying to keep kayfabe, like I was talking about. You know, I just need to support my mom and this, that, and the third. And it's nice to see. It's nice to see like actual ring psychology at a wrestling event that's not WWE.
Right. Yeah.
It's storyline progression. You know, there was an intergender match with the Queen of House of Glory. She had turned down this guy's proposal at a previous event, and then he wound up committing domestic violence by attacking her. So they had a match, an intergender match, and penis plex because she grabbed Sasha. The guy's name was Sasha. She grabbed his nutsack, and she kept doing he's got a small penis with her hands. So I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna throw like a penis plex at him, but it was like a claw and it was like paralyzation. It was just funny. Who could actually work in the ring? There were some stiff shots. So I don't know how people feel about intergender wrestling. And, you know, you and I, we've talked about this with Candice LeRae, with Joy Ryan, where never pulled this off effectively anymore. Gone are the days where you could have a woman being put through the table by a man and not have your corporate sponsors be pissed off that you pulled that off. But you could do that at an indie show and the crowd can appreciate it. And you know, Sonya Strong went over, and because she's the queen of House of Glory, but she was attacked post-match by another Violet who's going to be debuting Glory on December 17th. And I promise you, I'm not being paid by House of Glory to talk about them. I just appreciate an indie show right in my backyard of Queens, New York. So that is why I talk about and I attend House of Glory shows. And I hope other people who are in the greater New York area, even if you can't get to House of Glory, if you see some of these people in other events like Rude Boy Riley or Ken Broadway, another one, Nikki Heat, who's another one of my favorites, and I've mentioned him on Last Mark Standing, see how they grow and improve. See how we improve as broadcasters, because if you listen to some of the old stuff that Tree and I used to do, it ain't our best work. I'm just going to put it out there like that. And together, indie pop is helping everybody grow. And that's what we're doing here. It's all about inclusion. It's all about growth. It's all about decorum and policing and trying to make people a better fan and a more educated fan. And I know we're going to get a lot of hate mail because some people pop will write me and say, you guys are too insidery. Stop talking as if you're insidery. And I don't like to think we do that. I like to think that we are bringing love of independent wrestling to the masses, to the WWE audience who can appreciate what we appreciate. Said, not a lot of these people are going to make the major leagues. This is as far as they're going to go. Support them. They got a dream just like we have a dream. They're doing their job. Let's be supportive fans. Let's be there to root them on. If they're a heel, boo them, make one or two jokes, but don't keep it going, man. Don't be to the point where you're like, oh, here's that guy. I don't want to talk to that guy. Like drunk guy A, who is bawling, calling himself a fuck up. So don't be that guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
Go ahead.
It's interesting because it's like, you know, after my experience, I appreciate the fact that I can be a fan. So, you know, it's kind of like when you finally have to put on the other hat and report on wrestling and look at it differently. You don't realize how much you miss just being a fan. And that's kind of what I missed. And so it's, you know, like it's kind of a gift that we get to do this, you know, still like and see good wrestling and help people advance their careers and like put them over. Like that's really awesome that we have the chance to do that. And so, you know, like realize the power that you have as an audience member, as a wrestling fan who goes to indie wrestling shows, because you know, you can do a lot more than just like getting drunk and being a jackass. I mean, you can help advance someone's career. You can help them, you know, gain confidence in the ring, become better wrestlers. I mean, Damian and I have seen it, you know, in the last couple of months with some of the people that we're friends with. People have grown leaps and bounds. I mean, you see it in WWE. If you just watch WWE, how a wrestler can can gain confidence and become a better wrestler just in a matter of weeks and months if they get the right response and they feel the right situation, and everything comes together. And so we have the power to contribute that to the wrestler's experience. And so I think, to look at it more that you have the power of as a fan to do that, and not you're just like there to have a good time, I think is important to realize.
Right. And that's you're absolutely right now that I'm thinking about it. And I want to apologize earlier to the audience. And I know you're not supposed to apologize to the audience in radio and broadcasting, but I'm actually going to say sorry. I'm sorry if I let anybody down today in the show, because full disclosure, this wasn't one of my best days. A lot of stuff's happening. So for me to go to House of Glory last night and to be surrounded by good in-ring action, but to have it almost be killed by the actions of fans, quote unquote, was such a buzzkill for me, to the point where I didn't even want to record Indie Pop today. I didn't even want to record anything. But because we owe it to the people who listen to Indie Pop on the New Age Insiders Network, I came to play to bring you my B minus game, as it were. And I promise you, I'm not always going to be this all over the place. I'm a lot more structured than I am today. But I guess my prevailing factors, or my number one bulletin points I want to get across to you. When attending events, if you want to be a fan, be involved, but don't be a distraction. At indie shows, help get the wrestlers over. That's rule number one. Rule number two: do not overindulge on the alcohol, even though it's cheap. If you can down the beer, the pitchers and copious amounts of beer, or in my case, vodka on the rocks or whatever. And yes, I drink vodka straight when I go to events. Yeah. Cut yourself off. Know when you've had enough, where you're not sounding like a blubbering idiot, right? Or you're just going to be that guy that winds up throwing up in the bathroom after a match, because
it's not
those kinds of guys.
It's not a nightclub. Like a nightclub.
Well, no. To be fair, there are events at nightclubs.
That's true. But I mean,
remember, Le Boom for Evolve is a nightclub.
Yes, so. But it's the context of why you're there. So just know that there are going to be sober people around. I feel like if you go to a nightclub, you just assume that everybody's going to be drunk and it doesn't matter. But there are going to be reporters. There are going to be wrestlers who don't drink. I mean, the wrestlers definitely won't be drinking when they're wrestling, and so they'll be sober. And so there'll be some logical, level-headed, reasonable people who will see you be a jackass. So it's probably not in your best interest to make a fool out of yourself in front of a bunch of people who are much stronger than you.
Funny thing when you mentioned the fact that there will be reporters there, Mike Johnson from PWI, PW Insider, I should say, was in attendance. So he was covering the event because, like I said, Ricochet and Zach were there. And I didn't even recognize him. My friend who I brought with me, he recognized him because he's the guy I went with last night. And you know this, Trina, it wasn't Rick Castle, it was somebody else. He's actually been going to independent wrestling longer than I've been going to wrestling shows as a whole. He's my age, and he knows all about the Queens independent wrestling scene. So I want to give James Flores a big shout out for introducing me to a lot of different promotions that I didn't know about happening in the New York City area. So you're going to get a lot more coverage of New York independent wrestling because I know this gentleman who can point me in the right direction. So that's another thing. Find a person at events, and Trina's a good person for this, that can point you in the right direction to an event, to a person to keep an eye out for. Because if you have a style that you like to watch, if you have a wrestler that you like to watch, pay attention to where they're going. Get newsletters sent to you, because I get newsletters sent to me all the time about where independent wrestling shows are going to be. So that's why I know where I'm going to go to cover said events. So don't be a dick is the universal rule of Damian Gracia, of Salty Damian G. That's my number one rule. Don't be a dick. Number two, don't be a drunk dick. That's even worse at a wrestling show, especially an independent wrestling show, because it's such an intimate environment. You're going to wind up making a fool of yourself. And if it gets out on social media, there's a difference between job guy and career guy. You might kill your career or your job if you're acting the fool. And number three, appreciate what you're watching, because you never know if this is the next person that's going to make it to WWE or Ring of Honor or some PWG stuff. I've never been to PWG, and this is me awkwardly segueing into the PWG. Discussion. Again, I'm sorry, folks. I'm not on my game today. This is like a B- level of
Right.
hosting duties for me today.
And
So I apologize.
And Damian's probably going to yell at me off air for not reining him in, but I'm sort of enjoying this wild ride. So I'm kind of letting you go, just to see where this people don't get the other side of you. So I think
The dilapidated side, no, they don't.
No, but it's nice every once in a while to see like your unbridled passion as a fan. Because you were always a professional and a broadcaster first, and I think sometimes you let that overtake that part of you. So, I think this is a great episode. Don't worry about it; it'll be okay. Let's transition to PWG when, since you very gracefully transitions us over to PWG, we might as well talk about it.
Because that's what I do.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, totally fine. So we wanted to bring up PWG because both of us did go to events this weekend, and we got exposed to a lot of different fans, a lot of different reporters, people in the business and things like that, and just wrestling fans in general. And so I got a different perspective on PWG. And if you listen to The Last Mark Standing, you know that we did specifically an episode about PWG and elitism in indie wrestling. Because PWG is, if you don't know, is a pro wrestling guerrilla, and it's
there you go.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in Reseda, California. They are a organization that gets some of the biggest wrestlers, indie wrestlers in the world. People want to work for PWG. It's just an event that special to wrestlers. They love to wrestle in that venue because it's just a tiny little, Elks Lodge that fits 400 people. They only do, 3, 4, 5 shows a year. And so it's just a rare moment for wrestlers to hang out with all of their friends that they never get to see and perform for a crowd that's very, very grateful. And so it's a very special thing. That's the other side of the story that I got from talking to people this weekend, because when Damian and I covered it for Last Mark Standing, we saw it from an outsider's perspective. We saw it from of themselves ringside and going like, haha, I'm here and you're not, sort of thing. And so I found that interesting because we definitely railed against the elitism of it all, because to us, that's very much against the spirit of wrestling. Like, wrestling is very much a everybody's welcome sort of thing. It's for the masses, for the poor, for the rich. It doesn't matter what socioeconomic, class you're in. It, you can enjoy wrestling. It doesn't matter. And so to have an organization be so elitist in the way that they run things, because the other thing is that it is a small venue, so 400 seats per event. They do not live stream. They don't show it, on a live streaming service after the fact. You can only see it in person on that day, or buy the DVD 6 months later, 5 to 6 months later, and that's the only way you can see the show. And so, that's just so like against everything that wrestling does. You want to make it available to people. I mean, look at the networks doing. So when we covered it originally, we covered it as like, look, there are so many dedicated fans out there who will never get to make it to a PWG show, and that's not fair. And that's how we saw it. And this weekend I got a different perspective. I got the perspective of someone who was a big fan, and who sees it as maybe wrestling's last underground organization, like last special thing that wrestling has. And so, I wanted to pick Damian's brain because I told him I got a different perspective, but I didn't tell him exactly what it was. And so I wanted to see what he thought, about, because we're a little bit older, and I equate it to like maybe the grunge scene or the punk rock scene, when you were younger, or like stuff like that. Like there's always like the underground special stuff that happens, and you either like want to keep it special, or or you want it to be mainstream. It depends on what you're into. And so I just thought it was interesting to see that point of view, because I never really thought about it. And after I talked to somebody about it, I'm like, maybe I do want it to stay special. Like I completely flipped like 180 and was like, maybe I do want there to be something that I never attend, but is still special to the fans that get to go, and special to the wrestlers who get to do it. Because, like, it's not, I love wrestling, but it's for everybody. And
right.
if it's meaningful for some people to have this thing and I can't have it, then by all means, like, I'm fine with that. Like, if I never make it to a PWG, but it makes everyone else happy, like, that's fine with me. But, I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. I brought
You
this
want
up
my
with
reaction?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
go
get your
ahead.
reaction first. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm gonna take a different path, probably to the same answer, but as I conceptualize this verbally, I can't stand the way PWG operates. I can't stand the way the fans of PWG operate, because for me, and it goes back to what we talked about on Last Mark Standing, where the vast majority, and don't call me out on this, don't at me when it comes to this kind of stuff. You know who you are. Those fans that go, because I want to be seen at PWG. Look where I'm at. Look where you're not. Ha, ha, ha. I got 2 words for you. That is what I can't stand. When an event sells out for 400 seats were gone in the span of like what, a half an hour?
Less than that, like 12 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I saw the tweet. I saw the tweet online about, well, I can't wait to see the same 400 people that I see at every PWG event. Thanks for letting everybody else get in on the action, guys. Like, that bothers me.
Yeah.
That really irks me, because it's almost as if it's a price gouge situation or like a StubHubby situation where, well, the same people are going to get the tickets because they got an in, or they can hack the internet and get their tickets. So too bad, so sad for you. Guess you're never going to go to PWG. So when you talk about being elitist, when you talk about being, trying to stay true to your underground roots, but how can you be underground if you're not trying to engage those who want to be part of the underground? You're making it elite.
Yeah.
Not delete. Elite. Right. And I'm sorry, you're not the Young Bucks. You ain't Kenny Omega, so you can't call yourself the elite. All right? Knock that crap off. We're supposed to be inclusionary, not excluding people. So I know a lot of people are going to get at me at Dare to be Damian, so please, I welcome all of your vitriol. But I'm getting so sick and tired of seeing, and we talked about this with NXT. We've seen that same dude in the front row with the long hair at every single NXT show recently, right? And we're thinking, yo, how the hell do you keep going to all these events? But here's the funny part. This is where I agree with you a little bit.
Okay.
It does make it special. It does make it interesting. It makes it a must-see event when tickets sell out in less than 30 minutes and 12 minutes. So there's got to be a reason to go see it, right? But from what you've painted the picture as, I've never been to a PWG event. I've just seen, stills and
because they limit
a couple of DVDs here and there.
Yeah, they limit everything.
Right. But apparently people smell. You cram that many people into a real tight room, to a gymnasium type of room, it's gonna stink. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I'm just not connecting. But I'm sorry. I would rather have 300 to 400 people who want to all be there for the same reason. I know I'm dreaming. I know this is a utopian thought process of mine, where we're all there to enjoy the good wrestling. But I don't get the fact that you want to be a separatist. You want to be elitist. That doesn't work with me. Maybe, again, people are going to say, stop bitching and stop your whining. But is it fair to the fan? Is it fair to the fan that wants to come from, let's say, Canada to watch PWG, or go from another country just to say, hey, I made it to BOLA, Battle of Los Angeles. I want to go, but unlike you, like where you're okay with it, to prove a point. I need to go so I can at least be one of those people who are there, not because I can say, haha, suckers, I made it. No. So I can be the guy that says, wow, I got to see this match. I got to see this match. And that shit was amazing. And that's the kind of fan I am. And as I talk this out on air, I'm realizing the type of reporter, the type of host, the type of fan I want to be when I'm covering these events for you guys on Indie Pop. I want to be the one that paints you the picture as if you were there, because I was fortunate enough to go to an event. I want to include you in what you couldn't see live. You can at least experience through the storytelling of what I'm trying to get across to you. And that's my problem with PWG, that maybe not enough people who go for that reason go to PWG.
Right.
And that's annoying.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I got, if you listen to The Last Mark Standing, I'm the romantic. I'm the one who falls in love super easily. Like a flash of the eyes, and I'm like, okay, I'm suddenly in love with you. That's how I am. And I bought into this fairy tale like very, very quickly. That was painted for me of this special place, like specifically for the wrestlers. It didn't. The way that it was painted wasn't necessarily like, oh, you have to be there as a fan. It's more like this is something that the wrestlers like and want to do. And it's really for them. And so it doesn't even like matter who's there as long as they get that same feeling every time they go. And so it's, I don't know. I want to buy into that. One of the things that Damian and I were discussing off air when we were talking about this subject was that when I talked to a non-fan about it, the way that we related it was talking about it in, baseball terms, for example. In baseball, there was Jackie Robinson, the first African-American player to play in the MLB. But then, you also had Josh Gibson, who never went to the major leagues. And so you have two bookends of a story where you have, the happy ending, and then you have what never was. And so you can always fantasize or add a mythology to Josh Gibson's background because he never came to the majors. And so there's something special about that, like maybe he comes up to the majors and has like a mediocre career and he's just the second guy, or he never comes up and we build him up to be this amazing baseball player that could have been a great, but just was never realized. You know what I mean? And so there's something about keeping something secret and special in something you love for the sake of keeping something secret and special. Like maybe they have created something really weird, in Reseda that the wrestlers just gravitate to. And like I would hate to mess that up by opening up the admission to another 400 people or whatever. I don't know, like the way that it was explained to me was so special that I was like, and I want to believe in that magic so much. And that's probably what makes me a wrestling fan in the first place, that I'm like, okay, maybe it's worth not messing it up and letting it be and just enjoying what I enjoy. And having, like if that's the stuff that makes wrestlers happy, like at the end of the day, like they give me entertainment, like I want them to have as much as they can have back. So if you have guys like flying in from Japan specifically just to wrestle Bola, like I think that tells you something as a fan about the experience for them. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not about us all the time. Like maybe this event is for them. And maybe, like still try and get there. I think it's good to have goals as a fan, as in anything that you love. I think it's good that people have PWG on their list, but everything was recontextualized for me. I just saw it from the eyes of the wrestler as opposed to the fan. And, maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong. Like maybe it's just like an elitist frat party and everybody just shows up and it's like, hey, same like 400 people all the time and you just whatever. But if it makes the wrestlers happy and it's something that, if they have a bucket list, because that's what I'm learning too, is that a lot of guys have a bucket list of stuff that they want to do. I mean, Cody posted that picture after he left WWE, and everybody, copied it and it got memed and things and stuff like that. But I'm realizing that guys actually do have a list like that. Like they have things that they want to accomplish. Couple guys who got signed to WWE who'd never wrestled in PWG made sure that they wrestled in PWG before they got called up. It's stuff like that I heard that was really interesting to me. And so, I get it. Like, trust me, social justice warrior all the way. And anytime I see any sort of elitism or any sort of like secondary class being put down, like I'm there. I was very passionate when we did that episode about elitism in indie wrestling. And now I'm passionate about this because, I don't know. I see the different side and I see the positive in keeping something unspoiled, if that makes any sense.
I get it. And don't get me wrong, Trina. I completely understand.
Yeah, because I'm the romantic. Like I'm the one that's just like everything's magical. Let's keep it magical. Like,
and I'm like, screw your magic. I don't want nothing to do with
right? Yeah, I'm like, you're gonna destroy Fern Gully, and I'm like, no, just keep it simple and like,
destroy Fern Gully. I am.
Yeah.
No. Okay, come on, Tree. Like, honestly.
Honestly, that's how I feel about it.
No, so then you're in favor of not being able to attend a show.
Yeah.
Because for you it could wind up being your never was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're using the Josh Gibson metaphor.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh well, I'd rather it be a never was than as opposed to I go and it's a disappointment.
Not a disappointment, but it's like what if it's like, you know, when you an underground band, for example, like, you know, you remember seeing like their shows in small venues and how like the show sort of deteriorates once they get to a bigger venue or, you know, like whatever, it's just not the same. And, because who's to say? Because the other argument is that, like, okay, open it up to people, let them travel, let them go to other cities and do their show there. Who's to say that we have this again? Like, what if that was our last chance to keep something special, like to have that moment for the wrestlers?
Well, I'm not saying keep put PWG as like a traveling. They want to stay in Reseda, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But all I'm asking for,
just a little live streaming, like that's what I've heard. Like people
it's
like
the supply and demand.
Yeah.
Say it one more time. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, you cut out too. I said like some of the non-fans were just looking at it as like a business plan, and they're like, "What's the problem with live streaming?" You know, like you can still preserve that feel, that special like feel of this is we're the only ones experiencing this, and still have people take part. You know, if they're in another country or whatever by live streaming, you know, because that doesn't destroy the atmosphere. But the way that PWG looks at it, and they're very staunch about this, obviously, because they've not moved on any of their, you know, their stances when it comes to this stuff. They want to preserve exactly what they've created. And it's been like that for 10 years. And they're not moving on any point, like no streaming, you know, only DVDs, blah, 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 like all this different stuff. They're not going to open up seats. They're not going to change the way that they, you know, sell the tickets. It's like they firmly believe that they have created something that's very special. And to them, I think it's rare. And so they're keeping something sacred that they've created. And, you know, I don't know, like I see that point of view. And there's enough wrestling out there that like, I just feel like other stuff that you could put your energy towards. I don't know. Like, you know, maybe I'm too like in love with the dream of what I heard, you know, and
that's fine. And
that's for you. You know, you can be your
feelings and your opinions.
Right. Exactly.
I feel as if this is a company that refuses to evolve, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to not be open to streaming. It's like, oh, I want to stay real.
Right.
How much longer can you survive staying real?
Oh, they survive very well. See, that's the other thing I got, because I got the business side.
That's the thing, because charge $75 for a front row ticket.
Right. Well,
it's like, are you freaking kidding me?
Well, because history for them in 10 years has never proved them wrong. They just continue to grow in popularity, and they continue to foreshadow future storylines and future stars. Like they've had a knack for picking out the people that are going to be the stars, and they've never been wrong. And that's the problem. Like when you hit gold, like sometimes you don't want to change it up, and they feel like they've struck gold. Like they've found the formula that works for them, that makes them a lot of money. They've become very respected in the business because they do make stars, you know, like the people who win BOLA go on to have amazing careers and things like that. And so it's, you know, I don't know, like I know that this is totally the like romantic side of me that's all about this. And the social justice side is getting drowned out at this moment, but I don't know. I think I've experienced really special things in wrestling, and I get it when somebody says you can't recreate this anywhere, because I've had those moments. I've had them in Chicago. I've had them at AAW. I've had them, you know, like in St. Louis. And so like, I kind of get it as a wrestling fan. You know, sometimes there's just moments that you can't recreate, and I don't know, to sully them sometimes is scary, and who knows? I don't know. I mean, I'm not really like vocalizing what I want to say.
Well, that's kind of the whole crux of this episode. It feels as if we've been trying to work on our emotions on air. And
right,
that's what we're
that's
doing.
a very Last Mark Standing episode, yeah.
Oh, sorry for any indie pop listeners who are hearing us for the first time thinking, what the F is wrong with these people? But this is the kind of stuff we do at Last Mark Standing. We talk everything out like it's a therapy session, but it kind of revolves around wrestling. So before we get out of here, I want to get you on one more question about PWG. What do you
Sure.
say to those who call it hipster wrestling?
I I wouldn't say that unless you've really gone or seen like what the crowd is, because what I was told is that even celebrities can't get in. You know, and so it's really just a lottery of like who buys the tickets first. You know, I don't know, and maybe that's me just wanting to believe a dream that's not true, and you know, just like fairy tales. But I think until you're in these situations and you see whether it's hipster or not, or you see, you know, like, and that's why I travel, you know, like to see what other countries are like and see how other people live. Like, is it exactly the way that we characterize it? And so I think it's really easy for us to characterize something like Bola as a hipster event. When maybe the reality is it isn't. Maybe it's just a bunch of stinky dudes. It's like 400 weirdos like crammed into like an Elks Lodge, and it creates like an atmosphere for the wrestlers that they love, and that's all it is. I mean, because you know, we talked about it, we lumped it in with AIW at the time when we talked about it, because I think the weekend close to Bola, there was also an AIW event, which is in Cleveland, the same weekend as the UFC that was in Cleveland. And so it did bring a lot of celebrities to Cleveland at the time. And so Shayna Baszler was wrestling at AIW, which brought Ronda Rousey and brought Ariel Helwani and just like tons of, you know, who's who in like the MMA wrestling world. And so that did feel like a hipster event. And I think when they got lumped together, it does create this idea that it's just like a bunch of all the cool kids. And this is exactly what I said on our podcast a couple months ago, is that it's just the cool kids going to these events, and like, you know, like we can't get in. And I don't know, you know, like I think maybe the solution is to go and make your own cool events. And that's what I mean, that I've had my own special events like at AEW. Like, you know, like go and make your local indie the place to be. And I feel very strongly about that with AEW in Chicago. They have something really special over there that I encourage people to you know, come and see it, because now that I've seen different promotions and seen different shows and the way that different cities do wrestling, what AEW is doing is very different. They are very wrestling based. There's not a lot of gimmicks. There's not a lot of, you know, like would you see at an indie show, for example, you'll see gimmicks sometimes. You'll see like a casket match, or like a, you know, hardcore match or whatever. You'll see like something weird. I think Ryback took on a smaller wrestler. I don't want to use the wrong term. You know, like a smaller guy at House of Hardcore, you know, like stuff like that, gimmicky stuff. At AEW, a lot of the times it's just straight wrestling. It's just really good matchups. There's no gimmicky stuff. There's no like, it's all business. You know what I mean? And even PWG, I've heard, is like, can be a little gimmicky. You know, like there was like Joey Ryan took his shtick like a step up when he went to PWG. And so everybody's different. You know, Wrestle Circus down in Texas is doing a lot of crazy stuff. And so everybody's different. And I think the answer is to try and create something special where you are, or where you want to create something special. You know, like I'm in Kansas City and there's not much going on here. You know, I've devoted a lot of my time to Chicago and now St. Louis, because I know a lot of the guys there. And it's like, we're trying to make something out of Glory Pro, you know? And I think that's what we need to focus on, is that, yeah, maybe there's this thing in Reseda that's awesome, and maybe we'll go one day. But why don't we take it upon ourselves to make our own PWG, or make our own special moments at Glory Pro or AAW? I think we're totally capable of it. You know, like whatever they're doing there, like we can replicate, you know, or do better, you know? So who knows? Give it 5 years. AAW might be quote unquote a hipster event. I mean, to some people it is at this point. I've seen their Facebook comments when people can't get tickets. And, you know, I've gotten tickets before. I've never really had a problem, so I don't know what the issue is. But, you know, and some people just can't travel to certain places and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you can make magic out of this stuff that you have around you. It's totally possible. And that's, you know, this is going to be a promo for Glory Pro, but this is what we're trying to do over here. Yeah, I just totally, like, hijacked that.
Yeah, you did, but it's okay. It's an independent wrestling federation, so I'm okay with it. I'll allow it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Exactly. Right.
But so just again to apologize. It took me a while to get my bearings on this episode, because it's been a really emotional,
roller coaster,
personal couple of weeks for me. So this is not indicative of a normal indie pop episode or a Last Mark Standing episode. So I apologize if I'm not off. I guarantee I will be better next time. But before we go, I want to give a shout out to everyone working on the New Age Insiders Network. The Inside Perspective, I think that's the name of the show, Patrina. Am I right with that one?
It's Scotty Slade. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Rant with Ann, who's one of my favorites. Late Night with Liam, DDT Wrestling, and The Pipe Bomb with McCool and Company. Those are all wonderful shows you should check out on the New Age Insiders Network, also with the New Age Insiders podcast, the main show. You can check us out at lastmarkstanding.com, also on iTunes and SoundCloud. Myself at Dare to be Damian, Trina at the Marky Smark. Saturday coming up, December, I forget my dates, December 11th. Wait, I'm trying to let you guys know where I'm going to be next Saturday.
Next weekend,
yeah. I'm actually covering Evolve 74 on the 10th at La Boom nightclub. So I will be there taking notes and trying not to get too caught up in my fandom, but I went to Evolve 72. I believe it was last month. I had a great time. I got to see a lot of great wrestling. As our friend Papa Hills would say, I saw a lot of good graps. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. Trina, do you have any shows you're heading up?
Not really. I'm trying to make the last AEW show of the year. Pretty much the holidays are taking over at this point. My nephew's birthday is around the corner. So I think if there was anyone that I would hit for sure, there's one in Kansas City. Kansas City Extreme is next Sunday. And then, AEW on the 30th, if I can make it out there.
Okay. So you've heard us here from the Last Mark Standing. Again, Damian Salty G and Heel Trina herself, the Marky Smark on New Age Insiders. For Indie Pop, we will see you again next week, and maybe, just maybe, I won't be so angry next time. For that, bye, guys.
You didn't like it?